Memorial Service. They had a house in Lewis, Delaware. They live in Wilmington. Yeah. But I think we'll see. We may take my dad's out.
That's what we did with my
Did you?
parents.
Yeah.
Scatter me everywhere.
Exactly.
Then we get started.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Mom, I said hello.
I will. She's doing good. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here, I think. Here. And everybody's looked over everything here that we're going over. And Wally, are you going to go ahead and...
With your permission,
Take
I am
control
going
here.
to turn it, with the permission of the commission, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya O'Connell, right? And Graham
Okay.
to discuss the capital improvements plan.
Okay.
We'll do that first, then we'll get to the signage.
We'll do the signs. Okay, sounds good to me. All right.
Allowing us to come in tonight. You should have in your package or have received a memo from the city manager as it relates to our CIP proposal. So tonight, we're here just to kind of update you. School board at the last meeting, which was, did recommend some strategic plans of how they would like to spend the dollars as allocated to them. Nothing formal yet, but they basically did the priorities. They need a bus, of course. Middle school renovations, about $17 million that they're going to allocate to that. And then they've identified a couple other projects, but of course, they're not going to commit how much the middle school is going to cost based on what they want to do. But give or take, they have about $20 million that they're going to propose to the Planning Commission to utilize. And then there's an additional $3 million that the city has. Well, unfortunately for the city, it would be not wise for us to go ahead and allocate the money because we have an unfunded mandate that may come up and it may not. There's a highly likelihood that it's not going to be a requirement, but it wouldn't be for us to go out there and commit ourselves to do renovations. So at this time, we have a couple projects that we've identified. And of course, the HVAC here at the city needs. After that, we're just going to commit the funds for the project, and then hopefully we'll get the word that the project back with some additional project requirements. I do, though, need to ask for you at your next meeting on March. Recommend the CIP.
That will mean that you'll need to initiate that tonight. And it would actually be March 19th. Is that right, Karen? It's,
March 19th.
because it's not, no President's Day holiday, obviously, in May. Wish we got some days off.
We'll be back
Too many
on the
dates.
regular schedule.
And my hopes is within the next couple weeks, I'll have you the actual booklet that has all the department requests. Unfortunately, we cannot meet the department's request, but at least give you some information for you to review.
I just have a couple of quick questions because I mean, I read some of the comments from the city council. First of all, at some point in time, before we're asked to approve a CIP, will we have something definitive as to what we're going to try to do for the middle school? I don't like the idea of saying, here is a wheelbarrow of money, do what you can.
Well, unfortunately, they have hired consultants. And
Understand.
They're going through the process now and making sure, as you know, once you touch that building, you're no longer grandfathered. So they have to put certain things in place in the middle school. So unfortunately, those things are priority. They're going to back in based on the dollars that they've give to identify what they can do with the remaining dollars.
I understand that, and I agree with that. I have been in that school some years ago as a member of this group, and I am not a construction person. I don't know. But I don't think I like the idea of here's a bunch of money, do what you can, versus here's what we need to do, how do we go find the money? And that building needs to be ADA compliant, it needs to have good HVAC system, it needs to be technologically compliant, it may need to be secure at this point in time, and something else. And I would like to see that before we start committing money, because Yeah, I don't want to do just a halfway job, but that frightens me. And I realize that they have consultants, and the consultants need to come back with something, but I would sure like to see that, not necessarily before we vote on a CIP, but before we commit funds. I just don't want to get down to the point where we don't do what needs to be done. We've been kicking this can down the road for the 16 years I've been with the Planning Commission, and probably longer. And it's time we faced up, and if we need 25 million, then we need to figure out how to get 25 million. I'm just picking that number out of the air.
Sure.
Well, that's actually a good number, and I'll add, if you don't mind, our bond counsel and our financial advisors have indicated that 23 million is a magic number for the city to borrow, so that we don't violate any of our guidelines in regards to the policies that we've set. And so the city met at the retreat, and they identified that $23 million was going to be the number they were going to go with. But they weren't going to give $23 million all to the schools. They were going to say, and I'm not sure if y'all had the information from the schools that kind of had several different proposals that they had worked up. Like $5 million was going to be only to address the HVAC systems. And then they had the next one, which was, improvements, renovations, all the way down to replacing the middle school at $31 million. Did y'all see that? Y'all never saw?
We haven't seen any
Okay.
of it.
I didn't know if it made its way to the planning commission or not. But, so anyway, that information was given from the school board. Yeah. That information was given to the school board, to the city, for city council to look at.
Has there been any environmental analysis on that building?
I don't know the answer
Because
to
I would
that.
imagine
Yeah.
that there are some environmental issues that need to be tackled that are
Yeah.
above and beyond
Yeah, I would
just
imagine.
replacement and renovation.
I would imagine when they start getting into that building, and there's going to be a lot of things that they find.
That's what's concerning me, is you
Yeah.
say 20 million, and then you get in there and you find out that you've got $5 million worth of
Right. Yeah,
remediation that has to be done, and then boom, there's,
and I don't,
5 million's gone.
and I don't know this, but if that happens, then the project potentially gets scaled back to, we can't do a new auditorium. I'm just pick that one up. Or we can't do the bathrooms because now we have to do certain features within the school. And I'm just making those things up. I don't know, but it's a very valid point that they're going to likely find things that they weren't anticipating. Yeah, so hopefully their consultant knew that.
In terms of you mentioned bond, is there, the bond market right now is very attractive with low interest rate. Is that the urgency to push to get this thing?
No, it's basically, it's at a time where schools need the renovations. So typically with the bond agencies, you have to do certain things. Get that through the task right now. And then once that's done, you can go to market at any time. But right now, for us is to get our budget approved. That way we can know that, number one, the tax rates have been approved, crucial to the borrowing.
Well, we've been here, and forgive me, Madam Chairman, I think I need to maybe express some frustration we've been having. You all have a difficult job to do, juggling the priorities of the city. And it appears that this body has been somewhat marginalized on several decisions recently. And I'm sure you've been realizing, we've been spent the last 2 years updating the comprehensive plan. Dannon, who's a staffer, new young man to the city, Bill, Angie, and myself, as part of the community input. Part of that, we asked a number of questions. And when I saw the recommendation coming out for the schools, don't get me wrong, we love our schools, but protecting this giant vacuum cleaner that's going on right now. This is the document that Randy shared with us last year. I'm a pack rat, so forgive me. And last year at this time, we went through the prioritizing, and I was extremely impressed with the level of detail and the amount of consultation that went on to create that document, not only from the comp plan, but also consulting with staff and different agencies. And at that time, we came up with a prioritizing of ideas of those that needed funding and a priority urgency basis. Where am I going with this? I am really concerned about, there's a number of very, very high urgency projects that have been put on hold in order for the school project to go ahead. And when I read the $20 million, I agree with Bill that this may not be adequate. We don't know at this point. Meanwhile, we've got 3 emergency pump stations, generators for pump stations. Were those funded last year?
Well, I can actually answer. No, they were not funded last
Right.
year, but we have just received a grant
Okay,
for 2 of our pump stations to put in emergency generators. So we are working towards asking the question, based on the funding, if 2 generators can be purchased, or if we can find savings, if we can purchase 3 or 4 generators. So at least 2 pump stations will have new generators.
that's really good news because, if we can't flush as a city, no Taj Mahal school is going to be helpful at that point. And so these are the little things that are being put off, and we know the financial situation of the city. The economy is now on the upturn, thank goodness, and I think, it's now time for us to be prioritized. But I think where I'm going with this is a number of things that have come up through the citizenry that we've felt with the comprehensive plan survey that have been put on hold. The sidewalk issue is not going away. It's still a very loud and vocal group of people who want to have that public amenity somehow created in the city with all the challenges that might take. And that's been pushed aside. And so I'm really concerned we're going down a track here that there may be some political backlash, not that we're politicians. We here are all individuals from various locations. We've got great backgrounds, skills, and abilities, and we don't feel consulted enough to be able to give you guys some feedback as to what we're hearing from the city. So I guess the takeaway is, I can see the school need. We question the population projection, quite frankly. Annan gave a great presentation just last week that every population projection that had been put in the comprehensive plan the last 3 times have never been met. And here we are pinning a $20 million debt on our city on a projection, a population projection. We're in the year 2018. Our new census coming in 2020, we will know definitively what our population might be, either now or into the projection. Otherwise, we're dealing with smoke here. And I really question, this train is pulling out of the track pretty quickly, that we haven't given diligence among the entire, community, and particularly this body. So forgive me, Madam Chairman, I needed to express that, and again, I apologize, I don't mean to particulate, I'm just saying it's a frustration.
I'll try to answer.
With the CIP.
That's what the city council talked about. We won't see that. Well, that might be in there, but that's what they're talking about.
I've had a lot of feedback on that. Yeah.
Lee, if you'd like me to try to answer some of those questions,
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, I'll try to address some of those.
Sure.
So I actually had a very good response to you, but then you kept going and you added a lot of, you added a lot of, that's okay, you added a lot of things.
I'm leaving Saturday, so I'm gonna
No, I'll try to touch on most of them, but,
Okay.
so one of the things that was kind of holding up a lot of the progress that was trying to be made was the school board decision regarding consolidation and the consolidation of the schools. And as y'all know, that's a school board decision. They studied that and studied that and studied that. And the end result was their recommendation and their decision is that they're not going to consolidate schools. And so, and they've looked at the population, and figures that have been provided to them and the hopeful growth that's come in the city with regards to some of the projects. And so that decision has been made. And as a result of that decision, it then led school board and city council to kind of get on the same page about what needs to be done. And so the number one priority at that point in time became the middle school. Okay, and so that's when they started looking at their plans with regards to what needs to be done. And I feel certain that with their consultant, they looked at know the HVAC, and I know the, the different things with regards to building a new school, everything involved. They've even looked into, factoring into their equation the information with regards to temporarily housing students during construction. Construction won't take place during the summer. So they factored in, all kinds of issues, different things, including, which I hope are environmental issues, because the consultant knows the school's 100 years old. I don't know. Yeah, Bonnie, I don't know. How old's the school? It's 100 years old, probably.
It can be
Yeah.
a significant
And so
amount.
the hope is that, that's been factored in. So
We know that. I mean, it's-
I guess we can find that out through the consultant that the school board hired, and that information can be, relayed back to y'all. But, I can't speak equivocally to that fact that it has been.
We've been
factored.
following it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I figured you.
vicariously,
Yeah.
Graham,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that update in terms of the history. I know it has
Yeah.
been a very thorough and well thought.
Right.
The takeaway I got was that it's been pretty much premised on this population projection. That's where I'm questioning the validity of that assumption. We are very excited about Legacy finally getting all the green lights. We're not sure when that's going to come online. Normally, we'll be able to say, well, sometimes it takes 10 years, does it not, for a build-out?
Oh, yeah.
So we're looking at phasing. I mean, and we don't know how many school-aged students are actually going to be living in that development. Seeing on our side of town a lot of wonderful redevelopment of the older homes where young families are moving in. So I know school projections, it's not a science, it's an art. But I just really feel at this point in time, we're rushing into something that possibly could be delayed at least a couple of years, so that we can really get a feel for our numbers, and have maybe more definitive, population projections going ahead. And while I do want to say this, I served for 6 years on the Poquoson Education Foundation. Wonderful body, just a dynamic group of individuals, mostly retired teachers and administrators. When we set up the PEF as a nonprofit, we looked to West Point as an example of a education foundation that has a very deep pocket. And I have felt all along that we have the capacity in this town, a little bit more creative and a little less bureaucratic in our school system, and treated it like a private school, like HRA. We would be looking at alumni as supporting the school instead of just coming back to the taxpayers time and time again. I mentioned this, if you recall, last year when we were looking at the CIP, and I know there was some concern about, raising private money, but we've got this wonderful PEF. We've been a generation and a half now with our own school system. Many of our alumni now have had incredible positions of captains of industry. I've given a couple of alumni that I felt could be very, very good benefactors coming back. So I think we need to be a little bit more creative than just have the default, we can do a city bond. We're a small city, we have lots of needs, we've got a lot of pent-up infrastructure requirements, and I'm not denying the need for the school. I'm just questioning those two things. Number one, if we can be a bit more assertive back to the schools to be more entrepreneurial in their fundraising effort, and number two, waiting until we have definitive numbers to make a huge $20 million. So I'll rest my case, and forgive me.
To a certain extent, I do agree with you, but the difficulty we would be in between a rock and a hard place, I believe, if it would be a very fine line as to how far you could wait before, let's just say the problem was upon you. I can foresee that could be a very big. We do, let's just say if the projection plays out that the population for the school does increase, and we are totally unprepared, we have waited till the last minute. Of course, I guess you could put children in trailers, which is always distasteful. Nobody wants that. It's a very difficult thing to project. I understand where you're coming from, and I really want to get a little more insight into this. I want to see, just as Bill said, I want to see some numbers. That's one thing I really want to see, because I feel like right now, tonight, I feel like I'm in a dark closet looking for my coat and hat, and I'm not able to find it. So I want to know that. It's a real difficult situation that we could be in. I think, the school, if it's been decided that the school is going to stay, it certainly is going to have a lot of renovation, because as Bill said, we went there. We went there a long time ago, and a lot that needed doing at that time.
And I would say, and I don't go to school board meetings, and I don't go to council meetings, so I don't know. But from what I read, even when they talked about consolidating down to 3 schools, closing the middle school was never on the plate, as I understood it. I thought it was closing the primary school and the elementary. Yeah, so, ultimately, if that is the case, regardless of, even if you're correct, and if the numbers go down, if the plan, whoever makes the plan, if the plan is to continue to use that facility is not, well, it's not even ADA compliant. Quite frankly, we're a suit waiting to happen.
Right.
With that.
And I think it's back to Libby's point, is that they've been given a $23 bond threshold, and if they get in there and find that, it's going to be a new school.
That's what concerns me.
Yeah.
I'm being following the Huntington Middle School situation, and Huntington and Newport News, as you know, was built originally in 1923, just like ours, as a black high school, I believe, in Newport News. Now the physical structure from the building is, probably not as good as what we've been able to maintain here in Poquoson, but they're struggling with the same thing of, what's the cost benefit of renovating versus starting over, and there's a lot of considerations. So
To your point about alumni, I think that's an excellent thing to pursue. I agree. But as anybody knows, a donation is not a guarantee to anything and can't be counted on. But I think it's an excellent, I agree with you that certainly could be something to be pursued, but of course it's not a concrete thing that you can plan upon, and for that reason,
I worked for the YMCA for 12 years, and we never built a building until we had the fundraising in our hand. Sometimes it would take 6 or 7 years.
It takes a long time.
It's not an overnight. It's a lot of work, but it takes connections, just like a university. Got it down pat. But I really feel we have a very special relationship with education. And that was just what brought me to the town. Actually, my husband was the first guidance counselor at the middle school, so there you go. So I have a history with the middle school, so don't get me wrong. I think with some good business-minded people on a PEF, thinking in terms of, we're looking at $10 million, how do we raise that? Sounds like a lot, but
Yeah.
confident.
It can be done. I mean, it
Yeah.
certainly can be done. The economy continues to, uptick. That'd be a
It's
good.
not substantially on the uptick.
No, it's not yet.
I mean, you may read,
We hope
you
it
know,
is,
you
but
read
it's
the
not.
newspaper and it's talking about the nation, but this general region here
Our area is
is
not.
not coming
No.
back like other regions.
Exactly
And
right.
it is coming very, very slowly. I see it in the real estate industry, and I can tell you, I wouldn't count on a real serious uptick to be bringing money.
Not fast. I'm not seeing it in this area, but if it did, I mean, I would say this would be a good time to cash in on getting donations. I mean, you know,
I
I agree with you.
I
It's
think
a
you have
good
some
idea.
excellent ideas,
I do
because there's a
too.
lot of wealth.
Yeah.
Right, but not,
Here.
not necessarily in the town. I'm talking
No,
alumni,
exactly, in
and,
the
I mean,
area.
they're nationwide.
You
So,
guys, excuse me real quick. Was the recommendation to keep 4 schools, or was the recommendation to keep that school?
The recommendation was to keep 4 schools, and to answer your question, one of
That's
the,
what
one of
city
the,
council approves, right?
one of-
School board recommended, city council approved keeping all 4 schools open.
actually, it's the
I
school
don't think
board
that's our
decision.
vote.
No,
Yeah, that's a
done.
school board decision to consolidate or not.
Do we know what
Yeah.
the tax rate's gonna have to be increased to fund all this? Because the public, I mean, the feedback that I'm
We do.
getting
Yeah.
is like, people are, they do not wanna see a tax increase.
9 cents, a 9-cent increase according to the newspaper.
And I what?
Is that correct?
Well, no,
How much?
6 cents.
6 cents.
6 cents,
6
yeah,
cents.
6-cent increase.
So just to circle back, I wanted to
About
touch
$100.
touch on, the document you held up there for, I know that the book for the.
The
yeah,
CIP.
Yeah, the CIP.
Yeah. This was last year.
Yeah, I think one important note to make is in an unprecedented type of scenario for the city, to my knowledge anyway, city council wants to fund this document this year. And so, they want to put the money, they have committed to $23 million. And so in the past, you've had a document and there's been a lot of items on there, and there's never been any funding to provide any of them. I mean, so, and this is an unprecedented situation from which the city, got together with the schools. They've gone through a lot of processes, and they're saying, hey, we know the middle school needs to be addressed. And to kick it down the road again, I think has been done so many years that I think they're like, we need to address it. And city council's on board with addressing it. City council's on board with funding $23 million borrowing, which they said of the $23 million borrowing, they indicated $20 million would go to the schools, of which likely 17 for the middle school, of which they would not spend the other $3 million until such time that they knew they could do the project for 17. Because they have in the CIP, included when you get the breakdown, which you probably might have got, but of the 20 million, there includes, I think it's $1.7 million, on top of my head, for high school roof replacement. And there's also a 1.3, am I doing that right? 1.4? Okay, yeah, for primary school roof replacements. They won't start either one of those projects until the middle school is far enough down the road that they know that they can bring it in within budget, so that they won't expend the full $20 million on the middle school per se. And so, and then.
Looking at last year, the high school track somehow got to the top of the $300,000 for a new track.
It got,
That was funded last year,
it was, yeah.
and the roof was not at that time.
That was, I guess that's probably a school board decision. I don't know. Yeah.
So it's back to
yeah.
my original issue of the prioritizing that goes on internally. Please consult with this body. We're here, we're a resource. We ask questions that maybe people haven't thought about. And it really is concerning that there seems to be a bubble of this decision-making echo, as though we're reacting rather than being proactive.
Now, I'm going to say something that's really going to be controversial. I'm going to say, because Libby's made me think of it. I shouldn't think anybody, according to comments that have been read and made, and the questionnaire was sent out for the comp plan, I shouldn't think anyone in the city of Poquoson is going to be unhappy about their taxes being raised, because many stated that they had no problem with them being raised. They just wanted to keep the small town atmosphere. So, and not have many businesses come here. Now, this is a downside when we cannot attract things to come here, this is it. It's a tax increase on the population. Now, many have said, and I've heard this, I've heard it not just with this last questionnaire, and I'm sure Graham's heard it too, where he works with tax. I've heard people say, oh, I don't care how much, I'm willing to pay more taxes. No, it appears that that opportunity is, they come about. And I'm not one of them that wrote that on my questionnaire.
I wonder too, I mean, that questionnaire that went out.
I wanted to
I don't
attract
know how
something.
many of the respondents to that questionnaire were in fact property owners that will be affected by a tax increase. Were they strictly to property owners?
Yeah, it was sent to residential households.
It could have been,
Were
it could have
they-
been some
they-
renters, but yeah.
But for the most part, they were all property
What I've
owners.
always found is people aren't, they don't mind until they get the tax bill.
Sometimes the most vocal group, though, is really represents a small minority.
Well,
and-
they get their bill and they're the first ones down there to
But I can
to
tell you, when those
complain.
tax bills come out,
Sure.
you're gonna have a marching band down
You're
here
gonna have
because
it, you're all
I deal
down.
with it every day. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know what happens. As
I've
soon as that
seen
tax
them
bill
come in.
comes, they're running down here, well, yeah, I voted to pay for taxes, but I wanted sidewalks, I didn't want a new school, or I wanted
Right.
this and I wanted that.
But how do you get them? How do you fund our school? Everybody loves our school system, and we don't want it to certainly to not maintain the high standards that we feel had in this community. And Lord knows I don't want my taxes to go up, it's all I can do to pay them now.
hear that.
But, some people really, you have to have, this is where I feel like we probably really play a part in this. We try to recommend some things, and this is where I say sometimes maybe we're not taking as seriously as we should. We have recommendations, and then I don't know whether it's for political reasons or what it is, but it seems like nobody wants to let anything come here.
And I don't know if it's our responsibility or not, but there's a lot of committees in town. There doesn't seem to be a lot of dialogue between the committees and whatnot. And so the thing is that when we recommended that tattoo parlor, we should have said one of the reasons we recommended it is because of the financial windfall that you get from a bigger tax base. And that's one of the things that everybody was so quick in a knee-jerk reaction to say no, they didn't want it. That sometimes, hey guys, if you want to dance, you got to pay the fee. Exactly. And it's one or the other. But one of the things that's bothered me on being on this committee is whether I was on the school board committee. There's so many committees in this town, but we don't really talk to each other that much. So it kind of makes it it's a big government in this little town. We shouldn't have this. We should have better dialogue between each other. But they're going to not listen to us, and that's fine. They probably had a good reason, but why don't they tell us?
Well, and to piggyback on you, I know that the retreat that they had, a few
What
weeks
retreat?
ago. Yes, well, and it was off-site, so unfortunately, if we weren't able to attend, we couldn't watch a replay on YouTube or watch it on TV or even, I think, read meeting minutes for it. It was the CIP retreat that council had with school board.
Actually, it was the city council.
City council.
The school board chairman was there. You
No,
got
I did
invited-
not.
You weren't there, but you had an invitation, and the school board superintendent was there. I know y'all, I know the chairperson was made aware of it, but there was no, it wasn't taped. It was the community center. Yeah.
Where we did have pretty good rapport and interaction. We have had those in the past, and that's a good thing because we do get that interaction. We kind of can see what the different haven't had anything like that for quite a while. I remember
There was.
At the yacht club, that was,
it's been some time back. I mean,
that was really primary talking about the Big Woods.
no, it was another one.
Bonnie's right. There was another one.
It was
I can't remember
another
that far,
one.
I can't remember that far back.
And it was a pretty good one. I mean, it seemed like to me it all day. We were there nearly all day for it. A lengthy meeting.
A lot of fresh blood and a lot of thoughts and different thoughts there. That's what I thought at that time.
Yeah.
You raised about the roofs on the existing schools? dire is that? Have they been evaluated? I mean, what kind of life expectancy do they have, are they sitting on right
Well, I can answer that. One of the discussions that the school board in to evaluate the roofs, where they can determine based on the thickness of the roof, a couple of dynamics to determine if they could put another layer on the roof, or if it needs to completely be renovated, I mean, taken all new. So they have proposed part of the spending, determine if the roofs need full replacement, or if the roof layer on it until it needs to be repaired. So that has been considered, absolutely.
This is an example of, like, maybe we should talk to the school. In other words, you know, because I feel like, you know, if our job is to help get the city council with all the information they need to make interactions between different committees that don't seem to be taking place. In other words, you asked us to prove this, I think, and well, if we could talk to the city, you know, this is a great example of the types of questions that should be flowing all the time between each other, in my eyes.
My only concern is if the money is designated for school, and all of a sudden you have two roofs that have to be replaced, where is that money gonna come from if we've already earmarked $17 million for the school, and you know it's gonna cost overruns because that's just the nature of the beast. So, the roof can be a pretty dire situation if in fact.
You're protecting investment
Seems to me
too.
we need to know that before you, before
Right,
you
because if they're-
start,
they're
you know, what
protect-
is their life expectancy on those roofs? What's it gonna cost to replace them after they've been evaluated? Once you know that, then that kind of, you know, and you got a pot of money here, and you know that's gonna take $5 million to do that, that leaves you 15, working with 20 million. So
Right.
I don't
If
feel
I
like-
could ask a question, not to interrupt you, but I think Libby's got a really good point. When can we expect to see this draft CIP? Because in the past, when we've gotten it, it's had all that information.
Right.
Whether it's right or wrong, we've had all that information to look at. And so far, I've seen nothing, we've seen nothing. So when can we expect to see that prior to having a public meeting where we have to make a recommendation, pro or con?
Well, I personally couldn't make a recommendation without seeing numbers.
Sure.
That's what I said, that-
right now.
We don't have,
I can't.
we don't have enough to go on.
That-
We
that's
just
what-
don't have anything, really.
Nobody's been able to afford any of it. Now this year, they're gonna fund it, we haven't seen it yet.
So part of it, we are ready for the city side of it. However, our package is not complete until we get the school board. Our piece is really, you're gonna see some of the same information in here. We still have the sidewalks in here. We still have a couple of the right-of-ways that we want to get taken care of. However, there's no funding. What the crucial piece, so they have told me by March 1st, I should have that information. I can then in turn give you a draft of it to review. So again, our piece is easy. We know what we need. We know how much money we have. The city manager's recommendation projects, the HVAC system, and the remaining. The other money will be earmarked for the unfunded mandate. In case it happens, because it is prudence of us not to go out and say we want 2 new vehicles and we go and purchase them and this mandate now.
I understand that, but of course, the CIP does give some information as to how long the roofs are
Absolutely.
expected to last, and, you know, how long the fire truck is expected to last, and all this sort of stuff that we don't have at all.
Well, as far as the roof, I'm not sure if we're going to actually have that information because part of the spending for them is to get a consultant. Currently, they have earmarked about 1.4 million to replace it. Consultant comes in and determines that it does not need to be replaced. That number will drop. Same thing for the primary school. They have about $1 million for that. That could drop as well. But at this point, they have the full value of what the roof would be. Again, part of their discussion is making sure they're within their constrained guidelines of only having $20 million over the next 5 years. It's not $20 million this year, and then what do you need next year? But they've taken that into consideration.
I do think the key is to get us a copy of the CIP,
Right.
and maybe the chair decide whether we need a work session or whether we need time
Yeah,
to
'cause
talk.
we-
I don't really want to open this thing, you know, one day and have a public meeting the next day.
No, because in the past, we don't have anything to make an educated recommendation. And we have had work sessions. I mean, I know we had work sessions on it to discuss it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be prepared to do it. I don't know about anybody else. I
Good
can't
money.
speak for anybody else.
If the city's spending good money for these consultants, I certainly want to see what they're consulting. Because you're right, it's, yeah.
I'll see the
Exactly.
information.
Exactly.
And I'd like to, also just to reemphasize, there's lots of other needs also that have gone unfunded. That's my concern. I'm delighted to hear we've got emergency backup generators for our pump stations, as an example. But we're under some unfunded mandates, if I understand. I'm very excited about President Trump's infrastructure. It seemed to me if we were proactive, we would be planning, able to take that opportunity. And we don't know when, but it's coming. So if we have to put in a local match, for example, to make things happen, would we have that funding to do something like that? So yeah, there's lots I think we need to be thoughtful about before we jump in.
And that before we have new sidewalks, we need to take care of the sidewalks that we have, and we do not do that in this city. I live in a sidewalks have been absolutely on for years, and because I specifically asked Debbie Vest to help me to get the sidewalk area repaired, I fell in 1983 on a sidewalk that was not repaired, not kept. It's very close to the middle school, where children walk every single day, and that's a real sore spot with me. In front of my house, Allie and I, if we walk at lighting, we've even commented that we feel like we're walking in a prehistoric times. We need a torch or something to carry. He fell down in front of our house because the sidewalks are, well, one thing, they're unkept. They're unkept, literally. The growth is got them down to where it's a little narrow pathway almost where you walk on, where Public Works, I don't know for what reason, whether they don't have manpower, money, or whatever, they're not kept up. They are uneven from age, and when you walk on them, your feet catch on the uneven parts, and it's a miracle that somebody hadn't sued. It's a miracle that somebody has not sued the city from falling down. So I hope if they're going to start new ones, I hope they certainly will do something with the old ones.
Protected resource. If the roofs are going to fail, we because there's certain repairs and things that need to be done to keep the infrastructure in. And there's the time you have the extra money to go do the fun new things.
Right, that's right. You got to
But,
keep.
yeah,
what
we
you
really
got
to keep what we've got going.
That's
and
exactly
I think, I'm not sure whose job that is to look at that and determine which of these things count.
I don't know, but
But-
it's important. I have people complain to me about, a person that lives near the middle school has complained about the sidewalks there in that area, and I did make Debbie on it, she got them to clean it. It was before the seafood festival, and it was so bad that, I mean, with people walking, But anyway, I think we've made it kind of clear on that. We'd just like to have more information.
Look forward to seeing
Yeah.
a good draft so we can take a look.
Yeah, we'd like to, I think that's what we want there.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. See y'all. Is that good, Wally?
That's good.
on to the next
The only
topic.
thing I would, the only thing I would point out is that what this does is, it looks like we're not going to have a public hearing in March, if I'm hearing this right. We'll look at another work session, which it'll be April before the Planning Commission actually takes a look at this in its final form.
Yeah, well, I guess we can take that back to the manager tomorrow.
Okay.
And then see what that does to the
All right.
timetables that, as far as the budgets and things like that. And then,
The fiscal year is July 1st, yeah.
yeah, we will do exactly that. We'll take it back and talk to the manager and see how that's going to affect all of our calendar items coming up. And then we'll let Wally know so he can pass that along to the commission here. Okay.
Absolutely. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right.
Thank you for your time. You'll
Thank
have a
you.
good evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
Right.
listening to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Signs. Go to signs.
I
Leave
want
the
a house with, I want a
sidewalks
house with a
alone.
sidewalk, a well-maintained sidewalk.
Leave the sidewalks alone and let's go on with the signs.
Okay, and I apologize for maybe bringing this back again, but I didn't feel like I really got all the questions answered last month. Although, to be fair, the Planning Commission did give pretty good guidance, and I've changed it accordingly. You've got two versions, of course. You know, I couldn't stop at one, so I had to give you two. Version one is basically what we talked about last time, is talking about not allowing electronic message signs in village commercial. Everything else, and I boiled it down to just section 11-17 this time. I didn't advocate going into any appendices or anything like that. I thought at this point, what we want to do is we want to keep it simple on the village commercial, and I'll talk to you later tonight, but my feeling is that we can probably tackle other issues that we have with signage, you know, as we move further along, perhaps in some other work sessions, you know, on a more gradual basis. But this, as I said last month, this has really stemmed from some difficulties that staff has in actually interpreting the wording of our ordinance as it is right now. And also, quite honestly, we're a little bit, hamstrung's not the word, but we're really squeezed on the amount of signage that we can allow in village commercial. And probably not for a necessarily great public reason. For example, freestanding signs, we don't allow freestanding signs in village commercial when a freestanding sign could probably be a benefit to people. Mr. Moses at the fountains, Dr. Sevilla, as I mentioned last month, he's got two of them on his property, which under this ordinance, I'm not sure he could even get to two, you know, if I change this, because the way I worded it in here is you get one per road. So you might have two entrances on one road, but it's still one road. And that's but, you know, nevertheless, I think we can all agree that Dr. Sevilla's place is certainly not a nuisance or, you know, detrimental to the aesthetics of the area. It blends in fairly well.
What he has in place right now?
This will not. What he's got, and he can keep. Yeah, absolutely,
Well, I just want to
absolutely.
make sure that we're not making it so restrictive that, you know, when they get in there, and that's when you see the need. Once the project continues developing, then you see where they are. And if we have such a restrictive signage policy that, I hesitate to make it too restrictive.
Let me say this one thing to that. This is a liberal change to the village community ordinance. Right now, we don't even allow any freestanding signs. Kind of a mystery how Sevilla got his. Don't want to stir that up. It's there, and okay, that's where we are. But, you know, our current ordinance says that, you know, you only have one sign theoretically per development, which is not the intent, I believe, that was, double use of a word, intended when they did the village commercial ordinance. So what I'm trying to do is break apart the one sign, or if you got two public roads, two signs you can have for an entire unified development versus the signage that you can have per tenant. So, you know, we're still talking about indirect lighting for wall projection and window signs. We're talking at the very least about internal illumination for a freestanding sign. The question is, in light of City Council's decision to allow electronic message signs in commercial districts, of which this is one, do we want to go ahead and allow electronic message signs in village commercial? That's version 2. Version 2 is allowing them, version 1 is not allowing them.
My question would be, if I may, sir, and I hope I'm not interrupting where you are.
No, not at all, not at all.
Since the recommendation, I guess the requirement is that whatever you try to do should be held in a public meeting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll need to initiate a public
Should,
hearing.
I don't know if this is even practical. Should we be making a thought now as to whether or not we have electronic signage? Or should that be something that the public gets to comment on in a public meeting before we go forward with a recommendation? I see no logic in having a public meeting if we've made a decision on whether or not there's going to be electronic signage. It seems to me they should have a vote on it, or not a vote, they don't vote, but a say. I doubt have anybody come in and say anything, judging from our last number of meetings, but doesn't that make sense to you folks?
Yeah.
It sounds to me like that should be as much topic of a public comment period as to one or two signs, or whether they be, 1 foot per 6 square feet or 1 foot per 12 square foot. That's my feeling.
I understand that.
I understand the city council has made their recommendation,
Right.
and they probably, not their decision, they will probably go with their decision, but I just thought that it would make sense to let the public, if they want.
Right.
One of the things I think may have actually talked with Lee about in a meeting that we have, but I know I've talked to Graham and mentioned it in passing with Mr. Wheeler, is that the way we advertise for public hearings could perhaps be more general than what we've done in the past. For example, instead of presenting text necessarily, we could say, and I'm just off the top of my head, amending section 11-19 of the zoning ordinance to allow for changes to village commercial district signage, something like that. And then that does open it up a little bit for some discretion to be made as part of the public hearing that the planning commission would do. And one of your conditions that would go to the city council would be what you decide on electronic message sign. And then in the form that you recommended it, at that point, I probably would need to take it to the city council in accord with what you recommended. But I still might be to advertise it generally enough to where they could either accept that condition or not accept that.
From my perspective,
condition.
I'm fine with that. I don't think, and I don't know if that was your intent, but I wouldn't be comfortable sitting on the table here deciding, we're just going to send one of these forward to city council
No.
without getting any public input. That was my thought.
Right.
And
I'm
I-
perfectly happy what you suggest as far as the advertisement is concerned. As I say, we probably don't get much from the public, but I think we owe them the opportunity to say something.
She came here and she said one of the reasons she liked Poquoson was the signs.
Yeah,
Yeah. So there we go. There was one person who showed up.
But she did not go to the city council meeting.
I would have thought maybe.
Such
Which
a-
I felt almost sure that she was going to be there because she was very adamant about her.
Assume that
her
our
thoughts.
recommendation would carry over. I'm
She'll
sure.
learn, she'll learn.
Why do people think that?
She assumed.
We're a recommendation body only. And so maybe that's
Welcome
what we
to
should,
our wall.
maybe that's what we need to suggest from now on. We're recommendation only. But I will tell you that in the materials that we started giving the city council, we gave a little bit more detail as to what the planning commission experienced as part of its recommendation. And we'll probably need to tweak that as we go along. But,
Yeah, I think my comment to you Wally, when we met recently was for an opportunity for us to have site visits.
Yes.
And make whoever's available and interested to actually do a visual scan of locations that these issues, whatever they might be, are discussed, and without getting tied up in the advertisement, make that as part of the regular way of doing business. I'm having difficulty seeing where village commercial, quite frankly, abuts to general commercial. So the VC, and correct me if I'm wrong, so Fountains is VC,
yes.
and Food Line is commercial.
Food Line is commercial, yes.
Right, so we've got Rite Aid with an entrance, we've got Food Line with an entrance, we've got the extension of Alpha Street, which is
That's
beginning village commercial, and we've got Langley, and then we've got, on the other side of Langley Federal Credit Union, there's going to be another entrance into the Fountains, if I understood our PUD.
I believe that's the long-range
Yeah.
goal of that,
So-
because they want to put 6 buildings back here.
So so here's a hypothetical. Council's approved an electronic sign for, also technically Rite Aid could have an electronic sign, and then right next door, you've got Village Commercial.
It's a
that,
commercial
you know,
district as
We're
well.
looking at having a different, so having that visual, I think, is helpful, at least for me.
Well, there's no question
David.
that Village Commercial
Yeah.
is considered a commercial district, and as such, if you had 2 entrances one on each road, which you would, you'd have Wood Creek and you'd have the offshoot around here, you could have 2 electronic message signs. You could, although I think,
Yeah, you mentioned
do
it about
we have a prohibition on the number of electronic?
public roads.
I do agree that there's nothing better than
What they're
examples. Site-
reasoning.
I think,
It's just beyond reason.
something is tickling my head that we only allow 1 electronic message sign per property, but
Just
seem to,
said, you've got
seem to have that.
George,
I don't know if you remember.
you
Explain
know,
more.
you got everything across the street,
I think they got,
commercial across the street, George's.
It could be interesting.
Well, there's no question that the
And it's
amendment
distracting.
It is
that was
distracting.
adopted by city council opens up all those districts. Trying to
So-
message signs,
Wally, I know that
even with ARB approval, but yeah.
the village commercial, and I believe the general commercial along with Creek and Victory are both under the purview of the ARB, the Architectural Review Board, is that correct? So do we, now, and this kind of goes back and forth,
Yeah,
another
that's what I
board,
was gonna say.
what their guidelines would
Right.
be to, if someone approaches them and says, hey, we want to put an electronic sign, I don't know what their guidelines or what their internal discussion would be either.
If the city council would welcome or not, if we
Well-
got together with architectural, the school board and all these different groups ourselves and had a little bit more of a unified, I don't know.
They're not going to look at content, but they may look at the overall design of the sign, see if it fits in. Now, another thing to consider too, and I don't know, it's further down this ordinance, but I added in some language about submitting a unified sign that you shall present that. That's an example of what we would be taking to the architectural, as well as looking at it ourselves, where it talks about dark background and letters. So, you know, we're already going a little bit of the ways down and saying what we want, looking for it right now. As village commercial developments lend themselves to multiple signs, a harmonious and unified signing program shall be required. In the case of backlit, illuminated, and this is version 2, electronic message signs, the background shall be dark and the lettering light in order that the backlighting penetrate the letters. Only, I was wondering if we had anything else about colors. We really don't. Well, think of
The reason
a,
I'm asking is I noticed some signs coming down Wood Creek Road tonight, and they were white with black letters, and they were easily readable, and I read this with a black background and white letters. I'm trying to think of who has one of those that we could really go and see, because I know in the office building up by C's, where our building is, it's a big white sign with black lettering, it's very, it's clean, it's readable.
Well-
But I'm just wondering, how do you light the letters white and the background black?
well, I mean, there's an electronic message sign that we had in Middlesex County that was at a place called the Crier Center that had a black background.
Yeah.
It was a monument-style sign, had a black background. Think of the time, that kind of idea, although we don't allow scrolling and we don't allow fading. So there's several things that we don't allow that a lot of other people. But that, I mean, that would be an example. There's a volunteer fire department or volunteer organizations I've seen that'll have like a monument sign and they'll have a black background and they'll sort of, you know, print out, you know, whether it's pancake supper this Friday or whatever it is that they're doing fundraisers, particularly that's what you generally see.
Stretch your
It's a special
I
sign.
think if you go by the firehouse right now and you see the advertisement that they have for the EMT program, that's a back black background happens to be more of a yellow or,
Yeah.
sorry, my color vision is pretty bad.
I guess it's
But,
a
but
new-
if that was white instead of whatever the color it is, I think that's what you're talking about.
Right. If you were going, I think, seeing you, and there's other areas, more built-up areas that here that you go by, and you'll see the white background, and you'll see something kind of coming out you. It might be that's a white or a different colored background, and that's not what we would be looking at. Plus, the actual visual that you're getting is more flashing and quicker.
There's a stretch of Big Bethel Road, and quite a few churches along that stretch have put.
Yes, and they
What was that,
have,
Jeff?
they
All
have.
kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Not harmonious.
No, it's
No.
not.
Talk about destroying small-town atmosphere.
Well, and I think the planning commission's concerns about proliferation of electronic message signs.
How
That's a
does
good point.
Google Maps enter
I feel like it was too.
these days? Is that like, I put in my new business on With Creek. Someone's trying to find me, and they put it into the GPS. How long does that take?
I don't know
Well,
how long
do
it
we
would
know?
take
I
for
mean,
you
is
to
it a
put
mystery,
in
or-
the information, but I know I don't think it would take a whole lot of work for it to get on a Google map. And certainly people can find stuff through Google or, the apps they have on your
So
phone
is that
now.
responsibility back to the property owner to notify the mapping company that I want? It seems to me, I
would
mean,
think
I don't
it'd be
know, we
great
might be
advertising.
talking science.
There's a very interesting discussion going on in Virginia Beach right now about Google Maps.
Oh, really?
People that are complaining because I guess Google Maps
get lost?
route them through a neighborhood to get to the new Cavalier Hotel.
Oh, really?
And somebody in the city is checking with, I don't know how it's going, I just read that
Right,
this
right,
morning. So we'll have to follow that, we'll probably find out how that works.
That's why I'm old-fashioned and still use a road map. That's a great point, and I was going to try to get to it. They will route you through
Everything.
everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
and if you're in a town like, as I have been before, in Baltimore, and you don't know where in the heck you are,
Oh, gosh.
and you don't know where you're going to end up. So, give me the road with the inset of the city, and I'll find myself around, but with a good navigator.
Just to play on that, I live at the end of the new Victory Cove subdivision. Google map is not correct on it.
No.
Show you exist.
And that's been in place for, the development's been in place for well over, 2 years now?
I was just curious, because I guess sign is, its functionality is direction, right?
Yes.
Once again,
Yeah.
the city had this guy come in, since I have a business in the city, he came in and showed people how they could put themselves on Yelp and all kinds of things you can do.
Right.
But once again, that's another, if that guy resource could be available, there's so much redundancy and cross-pollination amongst these groups, it's just ridiculous to me.
There's a lot of information out there. There certainly is.
Well, and Lee, you mentioned, the Google Maps, and it's one thing to get directions, and I'll do that. And then once I get close, though, then my
Sure.
eyes are opening. I'm looking for the sign, because I don't know exactly where to turn. I know I'm close, but that's when I start looking.
Well, the argument can be made if you just go as far as saying that a freestanding sign can be backlit. Still has to go with the color code and the backlit. At least you don't have the electronic message control sign, which, those things are expensive too. I think not everybody's going to get them because they're expensive. Although, like most things with technology, the price is probably going down over time. But, it'll be interesting. I know a guy in Middlesex bought one. He said he paid like $80,000 for it.
Wow.
I was like, why'd you get that? Well, I don't know, because it wasn't even really allowed on his property. That was another matter entirely. It never got erected, so I can only assume that he got his money back, so. It is,
One at the
it
school
is.
was,
Keep in mind that our freestanding signs too are not very high in the city. Our maximum height is 6 feet for commercial and 8 feet where you have a monument sign depicting a subdivision or residential. Now, later, we may want to go back and take a look at that. We certainly can, but for tonight, we would be working within what Appendix D, which is our sign ordinance, allows, except as added to in this language here, which this would certainly supersede what's in Appendix D. So the idea is to liberalize it without giving the store away, so to speak, on some of the things that make village commercial. You know, you'll notice there's a lot in here I haven't changed about projection signs and you know, what I call temporary signs, but menu board signs and things like that.
Joking about a lot of this stuff, but if you think about it, like, there's a McDonald's that you hit when you come down Magruder, when you get off 64, and they have, you know, 100-foot signs, so you can see those yellow arches when you get off the interstate. Who's to say, I mean, the thing is, that's kind of exaggerating a bit, but as businesses, like, let's say Walmart comes in here, they'll be damned if they don't want, they want people to know there's a Walmart there, and if somebody puts a, you know, some snow cone sign for the little local business here, they're gonna come right in front of you and put whatever they want there. And I know this sounds like we're being trivial, but it is, I mean, like, when you come into the town over where I'm at, William E. Wood Building, the guy with the consulting business, he put up all of his lunchtime seminar things on there. And there's a Poquoson seafood on the top, and then the dentist has this thing on, it's cluttered fast. And I'm afraid what's gonna happen if it gets into a competition, that people would put stuff in front of the other guy, because, you know.
Well, as it stands now, as it stands.
And that's a good point.
Yeah, as it stands now, you got to remember that there's really very little village community in the city of Poquoson. Basically, it's around this building. Essentially, is where it is. And I don't think there's going to be any other avenues that are going to open up. I think it's fair to say that this ordinance, when we thought we might actually get real village community type use in here, most of the land is lying fallow and probably will be that way for quite some time. So lucky as to have some people who actually did want to put in quality village commercial development. But we're trying to prepare for people like Straight Shot. Now, Straight Shot is not probably what we would envision as village commercial. It was approved by a conditional use permit, so it's good to go. And, you know, some of these things became apparent when we were going over some of their requirements. It was just like, well, so, you know, that's really the background. But I mean, yeah, I thought the big question tonight was going to be really whether the commission wanted to move forward with electronic message signs or not. I think we can probably work such that we can have a public hearing on that.
Like I said, my opinion, I don't want to bias anybody else's opinion. As I said the last time, I'm not, you know, not a fan of electronic signs. I guess I will go along with what the group decides that they want to do at the public meeting, but I would like, you know, I may be completely missing the ball. There may be other folks out there that have a real good point, and I'd like at least to have the opportunity to hear what they said before we went any further.
Fair.
I suspect that we know what city council will do regardless, but hey, I just would like to make sure that I am more comfortable with any recommendation that I play a part with than I am right now. I understand the point. I'm not a big fan of signs, but I guess I can live with it if that's what citizens and the planning commission and city council want. Won't be any where I live.
So Wally, back to Straight Shot, where would they put this signage?
Well, as it stands now, they're
Maybe-
projecting to do a future road, which may in fact not get built anytime soon. So where it would be, orientation here straight,
In City Hall,
but
maybe?
they're right there. It would be on City Hall Avenue, basically.
On
Northeast
on
It'd be
the
facing-
Victory Boulevard.
Well, it wouldn't be on the corner because that's not. You'd have to meet the setback requirements, of course. But that's where their freestanding sign would be.
The other one would be on Alpha Street, because they're
Well,
connected through Alpha.
they wouldn't be
Mr.
connected to Alpha
Moses'
Street
grandson.
anytime soon. I won't say if, when that road is connected to Alpha Street, yeah, I think that opens up another, not until that is built and there.
So
You're not going to give them two freestanding signs on a road that doesn't exist.
They're ultimately gonna be on a corner then, is that what I'm
It will be a corner, yeah, when you think about it, because, I don't have enough paper, but if they're out, and I'm sorry, nobody else can see this, but they're coming off this kind of roundabout, and they're gonna do a road. Not like the one y'all saw before. It's gonna go down a side property, basically, so So, yeah, it will be a corner lot, but they will be able to have a sign and here at that time, but that's,
But initially, that sign's gonna not be visible until somebody turns.
right. I'm thinking what they're probably gonna do is some external sign here. They may talk to the
You
off,
mentioned that.
off-site signage, at the corner of City Hall and Victory. That's what
That's a brewery, is that right?
it's a brewery, yeah. Brewery/restaurant. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. If you're going to a brewery, you are gonna look at them on Google. You are gonna know
That's right.
where they are.
People do.
That's absolutely a great point.
It's a destination now. for
That's a
people.
destination.
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Oh, yeah, they'll be on the tour.
Yeah.
They'll be on the tour.
I
And
think
so,
Places are.
yeah.
I think it's four, we have 4 or 5 in Hampton now.
Richmond's got a ton.
Harrisburg's got,
Richmond's got-
Richmond's loaded.
Oh,
They
my
have a
God.
bunch.
It's, yeah, it's really a happening thing. I know when I was in King William, it was a big deal. I worked on an ordinance to say that we could allow them there because we didn't even really allow them. We allowed things like bottling plants that
Bottling plant.
don't exist anymore. But, you know, we needed to
In
modernize.
Rocky
our
Mount,
ordinance.
North Carolina, they're building a place where you can, like, an incubator for people to go to start their own businesses. So they can go into there for a while, and there's this little place where and then they go out and do their own. Incredible.
One of my good friends is an economic developer, and she worked up until recently. Now she has her own business and is doing great. But she was an economic development person up in Washington County, Virginia. And, I mean, that's a 24/7 job, but they had incubators going where they'd put people in, then they get started, then they get a place for them to locate to, bring somebody else back in. Yeah, it's a nice way to build up your trade industry. But it does take an outlay of funds. Their IDA was well-funded. And they had tobacco money, and they had ARC money. So, you know, they weren't hurting as far as funding source.
Yeah, some of the schools in the western part of the state with abandoned schools have adaptive reuse for incubator.
Yeah, yeah.
Talking about with the middle school. You know, you hear all this stuff with the size and I'm so glad that you brought that up, about the fact that it's hard to make any decisions without the information. I can't say. They just came in and said, let's just approve it.
Yeah, y'all support us on the 22nd, and I was like, what?
We can't do that.
Why would you expect us to even do that?
I can't
Bill
remember.
says we need some.
Never have.
We've
Not
never-
my time.
I was a little bit taken aback by it because we've never done that before. That's not the way we've ever.
It's a lot of money to just throw it
That was
someplace.
unusual, Bonnie?
Very.
Okay.
14 years that I've been
I
with
thought it
it,
was
we've
just
always
me.
had a work session or
Yeah.
two. We've often had the school superintendendent or somebody from that office come in, somebody from Public Works, somebody from Emergency Services, and explain their
It's
points.
interesting they
And, you know,
That's how we do it.
I can
Different
read,
departments would
I can
come
read
in.
what they give us, but I'll be darned if I'm gonna sit there and read the night before a meeting and get up there and defend myself,
Maybe
but
they
we'll
don't.
see.
We've had
We
people.
bypass because city council's already.
That would be very beneficial.
If they want my recommendation, then I'm gonna have a ten.
Madam
I
Chairwoman.
agree with
Let's
you,
sell
but
it.
it just makes me wonder why they didn't
Why-
bring
well, I
that
think-
in advance. Why would they walk in and expect us to just
And sit right here.
give them carte blanche?
Well, I'm sorry, we didn't have any information to give you, so I didn't know
I mean,
what they would have, but, yeah.
If what they said, I don't want to commit anybody. They said if they're going to have the information from the school board by March 1, it might be possible for us to have a work session and still have it or March 19 meeting. I don't know that.
Depends on notification.
But, you know, that's a great big old question mark.
Well, the advertising is a bit of an issue, because we got to get those out tomorrow. So, as it stands now, we'll, Madam Chairman, if you want to just poll the board, make sure we're all on board for a public hearing on signs, but I'll move that forward. But
I would like to hear the public.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last thing I was going to talk about. You know, one of the things I think we in planning find ourselves doing a lot of time is reacting to things and maybe not as proactive as we could be. What I'd like to think about doing with the planning commission, and not apart from regularly scheduled meetings, is come in early for a work. We might be able to look at various things in the ordinance that we want to tackle, signs being one of them. Maybe we want to look at long-range little bits of the sign ordinance, how we might be able to actually bring 3 different areas into one, make some sense out of it. There's some other areas where every day it seems like I run across something else that needs a little tweak. We might be able to handle some of those rather expeditiously. So it was an idea. I think the 19th, if we came in a little early, assuming we don't have more CIP stuff, which is possible, I suppose, to be able to talk about elements of the ordinance. And I think that in that way, I think as Ms. Fenixon said, we got a lot of expertise in this room, and I think it could really be a useful thing.
Well, how about too, like if, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like if the architectural board they can lend a hand, can we bring in those other folks too, if we have to find out what they're thinking? I mean, there seems overlap there. I'm just kind of, like, what's a school board issue? Let's bring the school board in, or like with the roofs. I mean, if we're not gonna do two, like, we should whenever they get done, it should be staggered, so you don't do them both in the same year, or if
Right.
or if they say, no, they need to be approved this year, are we gonna run into this again? And then there's, when does it need to be approved? And so,
Right.
to try to,
Well, and part of it's going to be that I am going to need to communicate closely with the people upstairs who are working with city council. I want to make sure that they know what we're doing. Then if they have anything, anything where they just feel like it's definitely the wrong thing to do, they'll let us know. So we don't time on something. So
And
that's the whole point.
Yeah, that is. Now, let me ask y'all, how do y'all feel about coming before a meeting? Is it easier for you to come on a separate night? I know we've kind of expressed sometimes that we feel like we're under a time constraint if we're having a meeting. I don't mind. I mean, I'll get here as soon as I can. Sometimes on Mondays, I don't get home until after 5, and I try to get a little something to eat in case we have a long meeting. But, I can get here if that's what y'all want. Would you prefer to do it?
I personally have had a little burden lifted with my dad passing away.
I
But
know
still my
you
mom,
do.
and so when
I know
I get
you
done
do.
that, I can dedicate more time.
And that's
my
why
only
I'm
problem.
asking, what would be y'all's pleasure? What
We
would
could
you?
table it if we weren't able to come to a resolution.
And I don't think you always will be. I think there'll be some stuff to ponder. I don't know that every time we come in here, we're gonna
So
come out
just
with
try-
a baked cake. I think we're
Okay.
gonna have.
All right, and you'll,
Yeah.
now, are you saying you want us to do this each meeting? Or do you want us to do it sporadically?
Well, it might be sporadic, but,
You'll let us know.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay.
It could
We
be
won't
up
show
to
up.
every meeting.
Okay.
And the good thing about doing it on the same night, and y'all can do whatever you want to, but
with
if you
me.
do it on a different night, we have an additional advertisement that we have to place.
Okay, it's
That's
fine.
expensive.
It's fine with me. I don't have a problem with it at all.
As long as the agenda is not really controversial, it's
Right.
on the same night. And it also, it makes it a little bit easier for the large crowd that comes to our meetings to perhaps, participate
Yeah.
or see what we have to say or
Right.
listen to what's happening.
That was
Chickens and
kind
bees.
of what I was thinking, but you're right, if we have a meeting that's got a lot of stuff, I'm not gonna bring you here at 6 o'clock to do a work session. We're just not gonna do it that
Just
month.
use your discretion as to, what's on the,
We think it'll be fairly light the next few months, but, we have some big projects coming in with the development review. Planning Commission seems to be pretty light right now.
Okay.
Subject to change tomorrow, but,
okay.
Hey, Wally, one thing I mentioned that Debbie knows, guys, and I know everybody's always trying, but examples always help me make the most things.
Sure.
Like, when those guys show, like, this is what Hanover County did, it's like, that stuff
yes.
is so helpful. Like the signs, and I can't envision all that stuff until you see it. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't want that, So that
we
helps
can
me
do
a lot.
that.
I mean, I don't
We
know.
can certainly do that.
Yeah, it's just so
absolutely.
helpful when you see. You don't really understand what the hubbub is half the time, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, now I see.
We can go look at it, but maybe council needs to.
Well, generally, as part of a text amendment, in my experience, I've always looked at other ordinances just to see what they're doing. One of these days, we may actually get into little design guides where we all this stuff out, but these are all wish lists for the future, job security, yeah. But anyway, so anyway, thank you for tonight.
All right,
Thank
thank
Before we go,
you. Is
are we
anybody else
still
have-
meeting next Thursday?
No,
Oh, good. Thank you
God,
for
great
bringing that up.
question.
Yes,
We didn't
thank
cover,
you.
we are not.
Okay.
We covered the rest of the comprehensive plan at the last time. Now, that's not your last crack at it. Dannon's going to put everything together, and then we'll have more work sessions to take a look at the finished draft, make sure we don't have any glaring weaknesses or any inconsistencies throughout.
Next week is all.
Next week is off,
All right.
yes. We're not
Okay.
here.
I'll mark it off.
I'm sorry, did we have any resolution of whether or not we were going to a school board representative prior to the CIP? Yes.
Yeah, I
Then
don't
they're gonna-
remember hearing anything to that effect, but I think they pretty much got the message that y'all wanted to have some, oh, you mean coming to the meeting?
Yeah,
I
have an
think-
opportunity
I
for a
think,
face-to-face.
I don't see why I couldn't, reiterate that tomorrow. I mean,
Maybe we could teach city council a thing or two by reaching out to these other groups ourselves, and then they'll see that, they have tremendous resources that are right here. And it would be novel, but yet useful.
I mean, without any input from us, I don't think they really want to.
That's their call. That's their
about that, I want to say about 2 months ago, when they first started, well, of course, I'm fairly new here, so to me, it was all new. But when they decided they were not going to go down to 3 schools, they were going to keep 4, and then they wanted to pick them out, they didn't want to have to go to a bond referendum, so, we kind of, so, anyway.
reads to me about 23 million, so we give 20 million, go see what you can do with it. I would much rather see.
Let's see us wait and build a new school.
If that's,
I mean-
I would much rather see, here's a definitive what we need and what it's gonna cost to do it. Now, city, you figure out how to pay for
And
it.
I think Lee has you had a good point, because we've never met those population projections.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I don't
going to.
think it's gonna go booming here anytime soon either.
There's so many factors that go into those projections. I'm going to say a heretic statement. If we cannot afford to finance and support our infrastructure, then we cannot afford a school system. And we're a city, and there's always other options. Carey's Chapel Road would be, to my mind, a perfect annexation boundary. Discuss that. Williamsburg, James City County is a unified school system. And so those are questions that are really tough and would be very awkward not leaving this meeting if I said it too publicly. I think those are the hard questions we need to be asking. Because I know the history, Bonnie.
Go read the
I've been here.
history, Lee.
I've been here long enough to
That
know
might
the
be a
history.
hard one.
But I think we're at a point where we're either going to thrive as a community and keeping our quality of life that I'm used to, or we're going to be completely funding the schools, and it's going to be a point where roofs are going to fall in and the air conditioning doesn't work. So, anyway.
I venture to say that would be something that I would.
It's
The
all
thing
right.
about it is, if you look at Cherry
I'm
Chapel,
just sitting here pondering it. I tell you,
But-
I think that would, goodness gracious, I don't even know what, I
The
can't even begin to
cities can
think about
annex
that.
counties. I mean, that's part of the.
I don't think you'll ever see that happen.
I don't think so
but-
I
either.
think that is,
I think that would be,
yeah, I just don't think.
But I know it would never
Yeah.
happen. But I'm just saying,
your point, you and I have talked
Yeah.
WJCC.
I
right.
don't
Does
think
anybody know
it-
how big Williamsburg is? Let me tell you, it is 9 square miles. And, everybody uses the Williamsburg address, because I worked
yeah.
up there. And if you take away the College of William and Mary and the students in William and Mary,
Yeah.
you couldn't afford to have a one-room schoolhouse.
and look at what they've got.
That's
I
why
mean-
that's why they're consolidating with James City
Right,
County.
right.
Schools,
Right.
yeah, there's no way they could run a school system in Williamsburg.
My concern is, I thought that the enrollment,
We've lost
And they're
500
down.
students.
It's
And so-
500 down, that was what last I heard.
where is this massive influx of people coming in? How are they gonna come in other than an apartment? Because the available land for development is very, very small now. And I don't see these massive developments happening in the next year or two.
it seems like legacy is the only thing that
I
can.
agree with what you
That's what
say,
I'm
but,
saying.
my point is what I said earlier, is that if city is going to.
I want to be able to live another day.
I know.
I understood was never on the table, even if they went down to,
Right.
then it's been abysmal for 14 years. It's a health hazard, it's a safety hazard, it's non-ADA compliant. It would be, I mean, my youngest grandchild is in college. I don't have any horse in this race,
Understand,
but.
nor do I.
It's,
You had to look at both the new school
it's
there or the
embarrassing
existing
to
one.
bring people into the school and show them our great sports facilities out there by the middle school and going into the I can't call them restrooms, locker rooms, whatever the heck it is, going into that mess and do that, that's just, it's an embarrassment to the city.
Well, I'm saying, if we're not having this massive influx of people, why are we so pressed to do it right this minute? Why not wait, see what the projections are, and perhaps scale down and tear that down and build a new building?
That's a small one, right, that's a
smaller one.
smaller
I
one.
would like to know, about what the pressing matter is.
Yeah, me too.
If there are conditions there that are
Dire?
so dire, I don't know, I mean, I know years ago it seemed like there were some there. I was in the school, there were a few that were dire. No,
Yeah, I think you'll see some of that I think you'll see some of that get addressed.
Right
Just-
now in the city of Hampton, that was built in 1912. Environmental
yeah.
issues,
I
but
just-
environmental
I'd like
as
to
well
see
as
more.
structural. So, I'm hearing them talk, and I'm thinking, that's a significant cost
Yeah.
in a remodel, and I just need, I
They
need to
put
see
a lot of
numbers.
money in it.
Put money in
It's a
so
lot
bad
in
after.
it.
Keep
Yeah,
put money and
I
put
Keep
think
money.
putting that
put a lot
Band-Aid
of
on,
money-
put that Band-Aid on, and then all of a sudden you spent $20 million for what? What do
I
you got
just
when you
don't
finish?
know.
Nature of
I think
education
that-
is changing too with computers
I
and things
don't-
like that.
Exactly.
I
So
don't
that
know.
school is just.
But I think we all
I'd
agree
like to
type
see
of
it.
education
We want to
they
see
Yeah, we wanna
what we
see.
expect to do with
Yeah.
$20 million, because
Yeah.
it might be tear it down and build a smaller building, it might, I don't
With the
know.
elementary school right next to it, it sounds like you can
clueless.
make a campus effect, where you make a small
I think they
building.
got that
Maybe they could
message.
share a common play area.
And they'll get that
I
too.
doubt it.
Debate, you know, a campus thing, where the old municipal building was at one point. At that time, there was a lot of controversy over that. But I'd just like to see more. I'm not, sounds like, of course, a decision has been made. I'd still like to, I'd like to see what, you know, I think there's certainly a lot of sentimental attachment, but it does come a point in time that you have to kind of lay out, you know, like you say, whether you're throwing bad.
This is quite some time ago.
It's been a lot, yeah.
They need a lot of work.
And you know, just the upkeep of it, I noticed it. I mean, if they just
That's what I'm
clean
saying,
it.
Bonnie. It's just, for me,
terrible.
it's reached its life expectancy. You know,
It's
unless you're gonna
definitely-
really adapt it to a different use.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of where I thought it might
And
go.
I think, but I do think it's life expectancy for a school. I mean, wiring alone, just the wiring. I mean, you're talking about gutting a building. Basically, you would have to gut that building to really make, by today's standards.
My thought was on it, when I heard it discussed some time ago, so we had a work session and talked about the importance of increasing hoping to get the, school population. Had declined. That time it was 500, I don't know if it's been any. A while back, hadn't it? My thought was that they I thought that would be the one that would be closed and something, the purpose or whatever, but as it's turned out now, I think it's not going that way. And
Everything I read was they talked about if they closed one, it was gonna be the primary school.
Well,
Nobody wants to
that
take
was
that
what I
building
heard.
down. Well, I don't get it. I don't.
Wasn't any of the discussions either, so
I don't know. I don't know. something I'm not privy to, and I don't know.
I guess.
Yeah.
what's all-
It'll be an interesting meeting.
It will be.
Or an interesting series of meetings.
Consolidate larger schools, not as well.
We'll see what, you know.
Went all the way through.
All right, well, I guess we're adjourned.
So, do we
Yes,
have-
we're finished.
Hey,
Like